All right, everybody, welcome to part one of our buyer consultation start to finish. We're going to start off by just talking through some things to think about. Understand that no buyer process, just like we're going to do listings in a couple days. No situation is the same. Everybody's a little bit different. So I'm just going to go through some principles and some things to think about as you're meeting with buyers and converting buyers. Now, what's a little bit different these days is compensation, of course. So with compensation, we do have to discuss that in a little bit more detail. We're going to get to that when we talk about buyer agency. Now, I want to say, just to start out, we're not talking about everything in super great depth. So we're going to skim the surface on a bunch of stuff, give you some really good things to think about, some good practices. As far as the forms, the buyer agency addendum, which is required with every buyer agency, pre-agency screening form, these are all things you should know, and it's part of your job to figure out and understand thoroughly those forms. So I just want to make sure that we all have an understanding on that. I'm not going to go line by line through any one of these. So anytime a buyer is introduced to you, one of the first things I would highly recommend you do is just start some type of an engagement with them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, put pen to paper, but I always strive, at least when I don't, in full disclosure, I don't deal with many buyers. I deal with my own clients, but my team gets just about every one of my buyer referrals. But I think the practices that I've used are tried and true. I always try to meet these people, somewhere. Face-to-face is always the best. I get to know them, and the first thing I ask about, and I just ask permission. Can I, do you mind if I take some notes during our time together? I try to schedule something for about 45 minutes to an hour, and if I can, I meet at a neutral spot like a Starbucks or whatever. I just feel like there's no pressure there. If it's somebody that I know, then I can kind of skip that step. But if I don't know them, I want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to just at least feel each other out. I always start by saying, look, this is not a formal interview. It's nothing really too formalized. I'm just trying to get to know you guys. We'll talk about what the procedure is and how it works, some of the paperwork, and then we'll go into MLS and we'll kind of start doing some searching. And I always ask a question, do you mind if I take a couple notes? And they go, no. Now, before I even get together with them, there is one form that you can find in your company library, and we'll talk about how to do this stuff in a little bit. But under the buyer agency, you're going to see, obviously, the buyer agency agreement, and then you're going to see the addendum. So the addendum is our in-house form, and the buyer agency is, obviously the state form. I don't have them fill this out until I get to the point where we've just gotten to know each other. But one of the things that I absolutely have them fill out is the buyer consultation questionnaire. Now, if you're not sure how to engage this, I will go through in a little bit. We'll do a little bit of a mock, start to a transaction. But this form I sent to them in advance. I want to, first of all, I guess really the second that I start talking to them, I want them to be involved in the process. And I just forgot I'm not sharing my screen here, so give me 1 second. All right, there we go. So in your company folder and your buyer folders, whatever they are, you'll have the buyer consultation form. Now, you can, feel free to ask me, send me an email, ask me to personalize this. It does not have to be my name on it. This is just something that I put together that I got from somebody at Remax Corporate. And I send this to them in advance. I call it their homework. So prior to us meeting, I'm going to have you guys do a little bit of homework. And they're like, oh, what's that? And I say, well, it's just a quick questionnaire. It's about 5-6 pages, whatever it is. And it'll really help us make our time together a little more efficient and useful. And it'll get me on the right track of being able to know exactly what you're looking for. So it just asks, who's going to purchase the home? What's the best number? What type of home is it for? Price point? How many people are going to live there? What do you not love about your current home? If you're purchasing a home, is there any special needs that you need? I have a neighbor who had to have they built, but they had to have a flat driveway and a flat entrance into the home because they have an adult disabled son who's wheelchair bound. What do you enjoy most about it? What do you do most of the time when you're at home? What lifestyle considerations are important? What locations, of course, are important to you? Yard side, most of the time it's, we need at least a half an acre or whatever. Garage, external, internal features, minimum square feet. Keep in mind, these people don't necessarily know what they need specifically. This is just a starting point. I can almost guarantee you, because we've been there before, and I'll show you this in an example in a little while, a first-time home buyer, they're going to start out, I want at least a half acre if possible. I know that I might not be able to, but I need 3 bedrooms, two full baths. That's the one that we always have to talk about, the 2 full baths, because normally in their price point, they can't afford a home that has 2 full baths. And so I'll show you how I deal with that later. How does somebody win with you? How does somebody lose with you? I want to provide a 5-star experience, assuming that's delivered. Are you able to give me a written testimony? Can you give me an online review? Whatever. So we start there. Now that's in your library, but it can also be in your transaction. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to assume that we're going to create a new transaction, and that transaction is just create new. We're going to select the traditional sale, and it's an opportunity. It's not active, not pending. Active would be a listing. Pending would be a listing that's pending. Maybe you worked it off the market, you got it under control, and you're kind of walking in there with a signed deal with the neighbor or something. Who knows? But it's an opportunity. That's what we call buyers. And what is it? It's a buyer. We always, on our end, we do last name first and then first name. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything else at this point, okay? Now I have to add a contact, so I'm going to add a buyer. I'm just going to type in Monica's name here. And if it's in the system, it'll pop up. So I'm going to hit next. Do I want to incorporate a checklist? Well, you probably do because it's a buyer. So I'll just check that. Buyer's agent is going to be me. So again, it just pops up with a couple keystrokes. And there you go. This is where we start. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because we'll simulate an offer in a little bit, maybe, depending on time. But in the buyer folder, we've got everything you need to get started. We don't have the buyer questionnaire because that may not apply. We just picked the stuff that we knew was really the most, popular forms that we would do. We'll get into the other stuff in a little while. But here is where you're going to, this is what I would do. I would rename this, checklist, pre-agency files or something like that. Okay, now I'm not going to put the offer to purchase in here because I would add another buyer checklist down the road because I want to stay organized when I do this. And we all know that you're probably not going to get the first offer that you write on, but let's just assume you do. Then I can rename the checklist to offer to purchase. Let's say it's on today's date, Green Meadow Road, Pewaukee, whatever. I mean, you can do it however you want. I want to be able to look over here and know what file is what's dead, what's not. If this thing later becomes an accepted offer, I can rename it to AO, and then I could put, 4/10 of 26. If it doesn't work, and you never delete them, you just rename it to dead, right? It's a dead offer. Didn't go anywhere. So, and that'll change here in a second. I just wanted to show you eventually what we're going to do because we're a little bit ahead, but this is where you're going to start, okay? Now, they may send you a pre-approval, right? Very easy to get it in via email. You just click on this, copy to email, go to your email, and send it in there. It'll end up in unsorted documents. Obviously, there's nothing in here now. If there's something listed, you just click on it, and then you can assign it to your pre-agency files, okay? So let's get back to what we do next. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second. So the next thing we're going to do is we've already set up our appointment. We've sent them the buyer questionnaire. It'll tell you when they viewed it. It'll tell you when it's been completed. And I just put a little initial at the bottom, knowing that when they get to the bottom, there's just something that has to happen on their end, so it notifies me that it's done. Let's say I set an appointment for Thursday afternoon, and we'll talk about setting appointments here in a little bit, and the things not to tell somebody or ask them. But I'll set an appointment for, let's say, Thursday at 3 o'clock at a Starbucks. You know, there's one down on downtown off of Brady or whatever. Ogden, I mean. I can't tell you how many times I've met people there. So, hey guys, training. So when it's all said and done, when we've got an appointment with people, you're going to walk in, take some notes, and there you go. You've got everything ready to go. You go through the buyer agency. You don't have to print anything. You can bring it up. And by the way, you can add notes to it as well. So I'm just going to get to know them. Where did you guys meet? Where did you, where did you get married? We're getting married in the fall. Oh, where are you getting married? You know, what does that look like? Were you guys honeymooning? Whatever. Just getting to know them. I talk as little about me as possible until later. I talk for maybe 3-4 minutes about who I am, how I got into real estate, how experienced I am, but I want everything for the most part to be around them. The more you can get somebody talking about themselves, the more they will walk away knowing that you are awesome, because people love to talk about themselves. So I do want to go back for just a second. When it comes to appointments, there's 2 rules of thumb. Number 1 is never leave this appointment without scheduling the next. And sometimes that doesn't apply. But if I'm going to list a home or I go on a market analysis CMA appointment, I always set the next time that we can talk. Because I usually don't on a CMA give people a number, because they always want a number right away. I don't do that. I'm not out to compete for the highest number. I do my research, I download the data, I analyze it, I send them a spreadsheet with my thoughts, but I've already scheduled another time. If today is, what's today, Tuesday? I would say, hey, I'm going to put it together later today or tomorrow morning. I'll send it to you. Do you guys have time at 5:30 tomorrow to go through everything on the phone, maybe 15 minutes? And then they've got the data, they've got everything in front of them, and then we talk. Or, best case scenario, you go back, but that's a lot of running around as well. Depends. If I'm looking at $1 million listing, I'm going to go back. I might go back 3 times, 4 times, whatever. So you have to gauge that. In a similar way with buyers, I want to set the next time that we can talk. At least get something in the calendar. Now, when you're scheduling your original appointment, the most important thing to remember is that you don't say, when are you guys available? Right? You're just going to pick whatever's most convenient. Could be Saturday morning, could be Saturday afternoon. I enjoy my time and my calendar. So I will tell people, I'll give them an option, and usually it's during the week. I'm available Thursday after 4 o'clock, but not past 6, or you can give a time, or Friday morning, which works better for you guys? And they might say, well, we work during the day. So do I. This is you gotta work with me on this too. Well, how soon could you can you skip out of work a little early on Friday afternoon? I don't want to be in the office until 5. And by the way, I've heard from going to these RE/MAX events over the years, I've heard so many successful, super successful, even single agents talk about how they never have weekend appointments and they never show homes after 5 o'clock. Because they are so sought after, people will take off of work and go, look, think about the commitment that they're making to you if they do that. Not always easy, and I get it. So you have to use yourself, but just don't open yourself up at any appointment time and just go, what are you available? Because then it looks like you're going to do any and everything around them. And by the way, it's setting the tone for future things. It's like, call me anytime. I work 24/7. Don't say that shit, right? So during the appointment, after you get to know them, now you're going to go back to the questionnaire and you're going to say, all right, let's talk homes. What specifically are you guys looking for, do you think? Like if you couldn't fail, what would that perfect home look like? And more importantly, the home that you will love. A good salesman can sell a process or a product, But what we can't do is sell feelings, okay? I'm sorry, what we can't do. What our goal is to sell feelings. When we start getting people to think about how a home makes them feel, you're in. Like, I made, why did you pick John? Because he made me feel important. He made me feel like we were part of the process. And that's really important because, and by the way, you have to also ask people, have you had any previous experience with real estate agents? That may be on the form, by the way. I don't remember. It's definitely on the listing form. But when you do that and you ask them the questions, you're trying to figure out what their pain points are. What happened? Well, we had an experience about, in fact, the home that we're in now, we bought about 4 or 5 years ago, and we just didn't have a warm and fuzzy. Well, what happened? Dig into that. Dive into that. Take notes. Why? For me, when I write stuff down, it ingrains it better in my head. But it also tells you what not to do. They're giving you hints. All right? Those are pretty obvious things. Well, we never heard from her. We never heard from him. There's something called feel, felt, found. That's something you may want to remember. People engage with stories. People engage with feelings and emotions. Smell is a massive trigger to emotions and memories. When you hear somebody tell you a story, you say, you guys remind me of somebody that I dealt with about 7 months ago or so. And when they came to me, they said, we don't feel like our realtor is really listening to us. And they felt that they weren't important. And so what I did is I introduced them to a process, my team's process, that guaranteed that we could find the perfect home for them. And in the end, they found the home they were looking for, they fell in love with it, and I don't know if they'll ever move again, which kind of sucks for me, but good for them, right? Feel, felt, found. It's a great way to bridge a gap with a story. And by the way, I'm not saying you should lie to people, but you can embellish. You can make things up a little bit. You can twist it a little bit. They don't need to know everything. All right, so feel, felt, found. Something to remember. So at the end of the meeting, we've talked, we've engaged, after we've talked and we've engaged, now we've reached the point where we have to do something. And people like visuals. So this is where I say, hey guys, let me put together your search. Now I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to send Monica a quick thing that I just remembered. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Monica, can you check your texts? Hey, real life stuff happening in the middle of our training. I just forgot about something, and it involves you doing something and sending somebody some paperwork in. Okay, so now I've reached the point where I've talked to these people and I got to know them. We're comfortable so far. We've got a good vibe going on. Now I've got to say, all right, so let's take this list of homes that you're looking for and let's put it to real use here and let's see what we can find. Now, more than likely, because I always ask them this too, where are you guys searching for homes now? And they'll say, well, Zillow, homes.com, realtor.com. We are going to have to talk about showings and all that other stuff, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start out, and you guys can see my screen here now. And I'm just going to say, all right, let's say Pewaukee, Brookfield, and maybe Elm Grove, right? Whatever it is. List price, we always have to do at least a little bit of a minimum. But let's say 675 is their max. I'm going to put 683 or something like that. Okay? Now they're going to start out by saying, well, we want 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, minimum of 3-car garage, got to be attached. Now another one that always comes up is acreage when you're talking especially rural suburban type properties. So now I'll go down here and I'll say, well, minimum of 0.5. Okay? So I always look up here and I say, okay, let's look at the results. What is available right now that's either active or delayed? Single-family homes. There we go. Now we're starting to see some results. And this is where they're starting out, okay? So now I could see a list, and I tell them, and I show this, and I bring my laptop screen around and I show them. Right now, based on your criteria, we have 17 homes available in these communities. And let's say they're very specific. They want, Brookfield or Pewaukee schools, whatever. Usually people are pretty adamant about staying in Brookfield or, Kettle Moraine or Arrowhead, whatever. And then I show them, all right, see this highlighted yellow C? If you hover over anything for the most part, you can see that it'll give you an idea of what it is. You can click on stuff. But this one means it's contingent, and that just simply means there's an offer on it. And you're going to call it the dreaded highlighted yellow C. And then they go, okay, so then we go, all right, so look at this. I mean, there's, this one's in delayed. That's actually, I grew up a block from there on that road. Saw that the other day. And here's one back on the market. So these are some good examples of what we can talk about. It gives them an idea of what's available and how hot the market is to start out with. So this one, all right, well, that's wedged between Lisbon and Capitol Drive, blah, 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 whatever, wherever these are. And then you start to show off your area knowledge and your property knowledge as you start looking at these things. Now, it depends on their experience. It depends on their knowledge of properties. It depends on what they know. I ask people, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think your property knowledge, like about your house, like the systems, the functionality? I'd say a 3. Well, what about you? I'd say a 6. Okay. Familiar with drain tile? Yep. You know what a roof truss is? Yep. You know what a dimensional shingle is? Yep. Okay. Blah blah blah. So we're off to a decent start here. Now I might use this one. I would say, so you guys got to pay attention to when it says no showings and delayed. You have to explain what that means. This one's back on the market. Let's click on this one because that's interesting. Let's look at the history. When we open that up, we can see, all right, well, they first started out on March 26th. They entered some stuff. They added some documents. They scheduled an open house. And it looks like they went live, right? Probably, let's see, maybe on the 28th or something like that. And then they changed it a couple days later to pending. Now that just fell through, 8 days later? I go, I'll ask them, so what do you guys think that might mean? Well, maybe something happened with inspection. Maybe the buyer, had cold feet. Right. See what they think. Gauge their knowledge. This is an interactive process. It isn't just John talking the whole time. And then I kind of go through and I explain to them how to use the system as well. But I still want to stick with our list here. If I go back to the list and we start saying, so not a lot of properties out there, right? And they're like, no. Let me change the parameters just a little bit. So I want to make this a little more realistic to a first-time home buyer. So with municipalities, I'm just going to get rid of these. I'm going to do West Dallas, and let's say West Milwaukee. Okay? Now, if I start to look at this, and I'm not really sure why this isn't, I know why. I'm going to get rid of acreage. So now, with a first-time home buyer, and this is a very real scenario that I've gone through dozens and dozens and dozens of times, I start playing around with the information here. So now when I start looking at, I don't see my bedrooms here. Where'd my bedrooms go? This is irritating within MLS. I lost my bedrooms tab, and it's important that I get that back. It's gone.
I think when you add one comes out. You can only have so many on there. When you put acreage on, you might have pulled bedrooms out, but bathrooms seem to be gone.
It's just bizarre.
It's on there now, John, on the bottom.
Yeah, I just added it.
I think you're right, though, if you add one, it takes one out.
so weird. Okay, so bedrooms. Most people want a 3-bedroom home, right? But here's the example. They want 2 baths. So here's what I tell them. All right, look at this result. See how it went down to 8? And then I play around with this so they can see and I can know what they want to set up realistically, right? Because for me, realistically, you're not going to find a home at 8 out there if you're that specific. If not, it might not be easy. So I might say, well, could you guys, being this is your first home, could you live with 1.5 baths if you had to? Because remember, we went from 40 down to 8, okay? And they go, well, yeah, I guess we could. Let me even complicate it just a little bit further. Let's add garage. Garage spaces, 2. So we go down to 2, right? And I'm doing this while I'm talking to you guys, I'm doing this physically with them. And they can see my screen. So then what I'll do is I'll say, all right, well, what if we did, let's say, 1.5 baths, watch that number go from a 2 to 6, and then what about a 1-car garage, right? And then it goes to 12. So what we're doing here is we're just kind of playing around with the data and with what's available, and maybe they could even do a 2-bedroom, who knows? But I always start playing around with this number. Now, instead of West Dallas, West Milwaukee, I said, would you guys be open to some, relatively safe areas of Milwaukee that are near West Dallas and Milwaukee? And they said, well, maybe. Okay. So now what are we doing? Now we're just opening up the search a little bit, and now I'm going to go into my mapped feature, and I'm going to say, all right, so now that we've been looking, I don't know where the heck it just took us. So let's dive into this. And we say, all right, well, and they don't have this overlay, by the way, but I look at, where is it, Wisconsin municipalities. And so now you can see, where Milwaukee is and Tosa and whatever. So let's just pick this area. And it's going to go like 124th. I'll do this area around State Fair, West Milwaukee, maybe a little bit of Jackson Park, grab a little Greenfield, and just kind of go from here. Okay, so now I'm looking at this a little bit different. Now I've got 34. Okay, so some of these in Milwaukee are now kind of, hitting our parameters. And then I keep playing around with this until I get what I want. So now I went up to 28. Now let's try 2 and 2. You got to tab off for this to update. Let's go back here. And remember, I'm just talking about this with them, and we're doing this together. Maybe this is where we settle up on. And they go, oh, geez, well, maybe we need to go up to 325. So that's fine. I'll do 331. I always go a little bit above. And then they say, okay, well, we think we can live with that. All right, well, let's look at the results. Let's see what the saturation looks like within this environment. So we've got 2, 3, 4 5 that haven't even entered the market yet. So let's say there's only 13, and out of the 13, only 2 don't have accepted offers. Now, this is where you have to reassure these people that it can be done, okay? Don't get into, well, there's a lot of things you could do. You could use appraisal gaps, you could use inspection gaps, you could do this, you could do this, you could more down payment and more earnest money, blah, 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 because you're going to freak them the hell out, and they're going to want to leave and never come back. I have a buyer that I was supposed to talk to last week that paused her search in this exact price point in these areas because she's getting overwhelmed. And now I just got to get her on the phone and tell her it's okay. Let's see what happens over the next month or 2. You can take a break. It's no big deal. So, you've got to be careful in a very unique market like we have today about how you allow them to think and feel. Because what I would say to them now is because one of them might even lean back in their chair, right, and just like fall back into the backrest of their chair. And I would say, guys, hey, look, we're going to find it, but it might take a little bit of patience. Now, this is also a decision that a lot of people have to make, and a lot of people might have to extend their lease a little bit. You know, if they're renting right now, and, oh, geez, I thought, you know, with 2 months we could find something. Seems impossible. So then I got to walk through. All right, I was a landlord, and I owned properties for 25 years. You got to be able to work in something, even maybe if you give them a little extra money for a month to month. And I would explain to them that I can help you with that with the landlords or with your management company. The larger the management company is, though, the less they're going to probably want to do. You got to get some flexibility so that you can keep looking, but not get tied into a year-long lease. And they might have to wait. I mean, there's no perfect time to buy a home. So I want to stop here for a second to answer questions that you guys might have. Because this is pretty much we're kind of done with the buyer consultation. I'm taking it to the next step here in a second.
That buyer consultation form that you had that had like the Schedmeyer group on it, is that one they fill out online and then you have with you when you come in, or is that a print off that you give them?
I send it to them. So let's go back in there.
Does it fill out like a condition report?
Yep. So let me just share my screen again. Yeah, let's just pretend we're actually sending it to somebody. So Monica's my buyer. So what I would do is I would, now there's a couple ways to add this, okay? You go to action, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, but you add a task, and you call it buyer consult, whatever. Assigned to me, requires a document, I hit save. I can upload a form or I can use form. So I'm going to hit use form, and I'm going to go into the buyer part of this, click on it, select it, next. And now it's taking me into the form itself. Notice I can manipulate it, I can add signatures and whatever.
I mean, can we just steal your form and change the top line on it?
Yep. All I do with this one is I just have them initial it at the bottom when they're done. And so what I would do then is I would then send this to them. Now, I have templates set up for all of you. So if you type in buyer, you'll see the template, buyer consultation form. And I just made it very generic, okay? So I'm going to send this to Monica. She's going to get it. She'll ignore it. She knows when we train, we do these things. So yeah, I mean, and you can adapt this on your own. You can do whatever you want. You know, you can customize it. You put your logos on for yourself or teams or whatever. But now it's being sent. So when it's completed, I'll get an email saying the buyer completed it.
Right.
And then I just go in here and there it is. Okay. What other questions? Before I don't want to move on too far.
I have a question. So when you were talking about when someone is a renter and that they're still looking because you've seen how many of the houses that were still contingent, and it's going to take a little bit longer than they expected. So you're saying trying to convince them maybe need to go on a month to month until we find something more clear is what you're saying? Or
no, I'm just saying that if they look at this, we got to get them to understand, or I'm sorry, we have to understand what their situation is. I might say, you know, I know when you look at this, it seems kind of daunting and overwhelming. It's not, but it is very competitive, as you can understand. They may then say, oh, geez, well, our lease expires at the end of June. I mean, if it were April 7th today, which it is, we have almost all of April, May, and June, but they got to be out by the end of June. So we have to, you know, one of the things we have to talk about with them is start to finish. I mean, you see a property today, we write an offer later today, tomorrow, or the next day it gets accepted. Usually it's about 35 days out, 40 days out maybe. You should know what their living situation is going to be like. Just like if they ask you, because again, where are you living now? Well, we're renting. When is your lease up? If they say their lease is up in December, which most landlords would never do that, I don't know if we should be looking at homes right now because, you know, you're going to try to break your lease. I mean, what's your plan on that one? And they may say, well, we're walking away. Okay, well, I'm not an attorney, but, you know, they could come after you for that. Yeah, we don't care. Okay. Or 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, well, I guess we never thought about that. When would it be a good time to start looking if our lease expires at the end of August? Right? I mean, I don't know yet. We got to see what the market produces over the next couple months. But the problem is 2 things, right? And this happens with online leads that we get. We want to just rush out and meet them and show them a home. We don't have any idea who they are. We haven't done any research on them 9 times out of 10. We haven't gotten a pre-approval yet. We have no idea if they're pre-approved to start out with. We just want to go meet them. And I get that because, you know, if they request something through Realtor.com or, you know, I think it's Homes.com that always connects you with the listing agent, that's awesome. But you should really be having those conversations before. Just like I never set up a search before I get that pre-approval number. So part of my process is, and maybe I'll go back a little bit here, is when I first talk to somebody, I will ask them, you know, obviously, are you guys pre-approved? And they may say, no, not yet. We're going to wait to talk to you. Perfect. I've got a guy that is an independent company based out of Brookfield. He's on our team, and he really, really, truly is on our team. His name is Dustin, blah, 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 blah. And then I make the email introduction. I do that before we meet because I want to get them in touch with them, with the lender as soon as possible. Now, if they have a lender like Wells Fargo, BMO Harris, especially, I mean, those are the 2 top awful ones. Then you have the next tier, which is the Chase, the PNCs, U.S. Bank. I mean, there's obviously very good lenders in some of those places. I mean, my first lender, which I did hundreds of deals with, was a Chase Bank guy. But when he left, I didn't use Chase anymore. And we still had shit falling apart that shouldn't have, you know? I mean, Wells Fargo is the worst. On the listing side, I never want to see those. But on the buy side, I'll just say, hey, you know, what I found in my experience, and all I'm here to do is to help you guys. What I found in my experience is that usually these bigger banks become problematic and they cost you more money. If you're open to it at now or an appropriate time, you know, I'm happy to introduce you to somebody local. But before I ask that, I always ask the most important question, and it is, how do you know this lender? Because if you start ripping on Wells Fargo and these people don't know you, and that's, you know, the wife's brother, well, you may have punched your own card out, right? Yeah, no, John, it was really nice to meet you. Screw that guy, we're out, right? I don't necessarily care who they use, but then if they're married to, I mean, I don't even like Guardian, UW Credit Union, or Landmark these days, personally. But if they're married to, let's say, Wells Fargo, then I think after I've created enough rapport, usually it's after a couple times of showing homes, then I got to have the conversation with them about, I'm mainly a listing agent. I mean, obviously I do buyers too, otherwise we wouldn't be working together. But on a listing side, I never want to see Wells Fargo ever. And they're going to go, really? And I'm going to say, yeah, because that's the one company that, for whatever reason, deals just fall apart midstream. And it's not the buyer, because we get the buyer pre-approved. We had to delay closing. Everybody gets pissed off. But when you are in a competitive environment and you're up against other offers, the listing agent who's experienced is going to absolutely look at who the pre-approvals are with, right? I mean, I showed you guys that this morning in our sales meeting when I did that spreadsheet. That's one of the things we put on there is, are they pre-approved? Yes, and then who? Those are important to me. So, I mean, just some things to think about when it comes to that.
To piggyback off of that, so when you know the kind of market it is out there, okay? So you're talking to these people, and you're like, well, do you just ask them, do you have any money to make up any appraisal gap? Do you have any, what are you putting down, 10%? Because
yep, you have to have those conversations.
You won't be very competitive.
Well, and sometimes I do that. I mean, sometimes I don't do it necessarily on the first meeting.
Uh-huh.
It depends on price point. If they're an experienced buyer or seller, you know, maybe this is their second home, third home, then, you know, I'll just go to their house because you got to do a CMA on it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Then we sit, talk, then you get into those. okay, you guys have been around the block. You know that this is pretty, but again, I flip it around. Now we're in the $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 range. Maybe it's not as saturated, but then we talk about it. All right, let's talk about strategies. What strategies have you guys used in the past? And if they're even better, your client from the past, look up the old offer, see what we did. So you guys last purchased 7 years ago, things have changed a little bit. And they'll go, yeah, we've heard that. So let me tell you about what's popular today. Appraisal gap, inspection gap, a fair amount of earnest money, even though I don't really think earnest money matters too much one way or the other. And that's the time I go into it saying, you guys are going to have to be prepared. And to be honest with you, you might overpay in your own mind. I won't let that get out of hand, but at the same time, you might have to pay $20,000, $30,000 more just to secure the place. Mm-hmm. But I also guarantee that I'm going to make that up on your sell side. And then again, feel, felt, found. I just had a client who, they were in a situation where they didn't blah, 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 whatever your story is.
Do you think it's worthwhile to say that before you write your offer or the day of your offer?
No.
You don't think you're going to scare anyone away?
No. I think you have to, well, again.
I think that when you get through that house and be like, Joe, we got to have it. There's a real heartfelt conversation about when you have a VA buyer that's like, dude, you're going to be up against really tough things here. Let's get your mind set around what's going to happen.
Well, I think so let's say we're done with our buyers. Let's just say first-time home buyers, 300,000, 350 tops. Set the next appointment. I set the search up. Let's say it's a couple days down the road. I get them back on the phone, maybe a Zoom. I prefer face-to-face of some kind. It doesn't have to be knees to knees, elbows to elbows, but I do want to at least get on a Zoom call with them. Then what I will do is I will say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish in today's 20, 30-minute meeting. What did you guys think of the search? Does it meet your parameters? And we're going to talk about setting up a bold trail search in a minute too. But does this meet your parameters, do you think? Does it meet your needs? Does it look like we have some options? Yes. Okay, let's talk strategy. Because what I don't want to do in the moment is slam these people with all of these things and ideas that I know are going to be overwhelming, especially at a lower price.
I think that was my point, that I don't know if I would intimidate them by bringing those things up, but get to the brass tacks when you actually got to put a offer in, and then maybe even change parameters after that. Like, listen, I know this was your max, but that was your max because that's all you can afford. Maybe you should entertain going down a little bit so we can get.
But I think that's a couple weeks down into this process. I'll give an example. I just yesterday, I had a buyer or seller and a buyer from, 6, 7 years ago. They called me a couple months ago, actually emailed me and said, hey, I don't know if you remember us. We want to buy a home for my wife's son. And this is the price point. This is exactly where it is. And it got a little frustrating for us too, because we were getting showing requests from them and then the son. So he suggested last Friday, we're face-to-face people, can we come in, or this was Thursday, can we come in tomorrow or Monday? I said, tomorrow's kind of sucks. We came in yesterday and we all just got on the same page. And I showed them the exact same thing I just showed you guys. We had the conversation, and they on their own said, so we got to up our price a little bit. I think you do. Because you're seeing. And then we talked about, so let's talk about strategy. It's not just price. The higher the price goes, the more risk there is to the seller. So we have to talk about what's called an appraisal gap. And you've spent some time talking about that. Inspection gaps, talk about that. I think that's the time to do it. I
think in a perfect world, you're absolutely right, but I think in the real world, what happens is when you set up that portal for them, they find a house and they're saying, John, let's go see this one. Can you see us after work today at 5 o'clock? I'm in love with this house. I think this is what we want. And then you're missed that whole window of them to review it and have logical conversations and calm face-to-faces. I think people just get excited. It's like going on a dating site where you go through and be like, wait a second, this girl's single. I want to date with her. I don't want to learn about the city's beat out there.
Right, but at some point, okay, so I'm not going to go down that scenario. let's use the scenario of, yep, you've done a couple showings, now they want to write an offer, now they're up against.
I think it was a couple showings is when.
Well, maybe,
Mhm.
but I walk and talk about all this stuff too.
Your time.
You know, I mean, the time that you have with them, you're gaining trust, you're gaining rapport, and that's the most important part. Once I have it, then I can be a heck of a lot more realistic, and I can say, all right, let's say you guys were to put an offer on this property today. What do you think it would look like? And maybe it's listed at 310. And they're probably looking around at other people there, or other people arriving, people leaving. As you can see, it's going to be busy and they're going to get a lot of offers. So let's talk strategy. And then you can go into those. There's no perfect time to do it. I just think that if you're going to go through all of this stuff right away, you're going to overwhelm them and they're going to shut down or they won't remember it. So in the second meeting, what I try to do, at least what I suggest, is you set up a Zoom call with them. We have two purposes. Number one, did you guys develop any questions? Because when they left, I asked them, if you have questions along the way, write them down. Let's talk about it on Thursday afternoon, whatever. Perfect. Number one, how are you guys doing? Number two, how can I add value to you today? Number three, what questions do you have? Number four, is the search meeting your needs as of right now? Well, yeah, there's just not a lot out there. I understand. Answer those, get through that. Now let's talk about the offer. And I know a lot of people don't do this, but I just find it to be super valuable. And I know it's time. I get it. I'm going to share my screen again because now what I'm going to share with them, a couple things. Number one, I'm going to go back to my folder. Okay, I've got my AO folder here. First thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to explain to them the buyer agency agreement, right? Which should be popping up here. Why is this not popping up? Very weird. Hold on one second. So, I mean, I just go through it with them, and I've already pre-filled it in, and I just summarize it, right? And you guys know that you have to have something in here. It cannot be zero, otherwise it's invalid. Any properties that you guys seen before? No. Did you write an offer on a property? No. Okay, great. This, that, the other thing, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about compensation. This is how I get paid. We're going to write it into the offer, whatever it might be. Okay, that's what we're doing. And then we're done with that one. And then we're going to have to go into the buyer agency addendum. And again, I'm not spending a ton of time on this, but I have to spend some time on it. And another strategy you could have, by the way, I just thought of this, is you could bring a physical copy of the buyer agency agreement, the addendum, and an offer to purchase, and give it to them.
And even include that addendum AC with it for those extra things.
Yeah, I mean, especially with move-up buyers, buyer agency is a must. You have to have the buyer agency, and you have to have the buyer addendum. If you get to the point where you need to write an offer on behalf of the seller, and they won't sign a buyer agency agreement, call me on that, because it does get a little dicey and it's risky. And we'll have to kind of talk about how that works, because technically speaking, you can write it. You just add your compensation in there, but there's no loyalty to you whatsoever. And just before we started this training, we were discussing here in the office, nobody is loyal anymore anyway. Just how it is. But the other thing, like I said, the other thing I got to do is I do have to go into the offer to purchase with them. We've set it up so you can just import these real quick. Doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to put this into, I don't know why that's there. That's a difference. Filling out the wrong field. But this is the time to go through and say, and you don't have to do it on the form itself. If you've already given it to them, and then you go through it just in quick detail or in a quick fashion with them, I think it prepares them for the next step, which is now we're going to go out and show another home or two, and now we're going to write. And maybe then you get into your strategies. You have to gauge. I just don't, well, I guess my whole point in this is you don't want to overwhelm people. with stuff. Because by the time you get, overwhelmed, they're done. So this is I say this all the time, you guys are leaders. You are leading your people to the promised land, and then we get paid. When somebody tries to negotiate your commission, it doesn't matter if it's on the buy side or the sell side. I would say, yeah, I'm willing to negotiate my commission, but let me tell you how it works right now. I work for free until you close. I don't get paid at all until you close. And usually that kind of shuts people up, right? What other questions do you have on those so far? They're great discussion questions.
I feel like you covered it pretty well because you're saying not to overwhelm them right before the offer or as you're writing, like for a house they really like, and like for that scenario of people they see a house they like right away and they want to go see it, and then not every time they're gonna like the very first house they're gonna go see with you in person. Then you can have those conversations about strategy and expectations.
Well, and I think too, like to Joel's point, when do you get into appraisal gap, inspection gap, stuff like that? That's something you guys got to kind of gauge. But when you are making an offer and you know that there's going to be competition, that's the time. You could share all those forms with people if you'd like. I think the more informed people are, the better they feel about the process, and the better they know that you have their back. Because remember, to them, they just feel like you're just pushing to get paid. Because if you don't know them, they don't know who you are. They don't know your patience level. They don't know how much you have their back.
I'm not saying this works for everyone, but I think that time to push the more difficult conversation is when you're at your strongest point as a realtor. And for my example is I might not be anywhere near as good as you on that pre-meeting part where you're meeting with someone and going through MLS. You're leaps and bounds a bit above me in that. But my strongest part is when I'm walking through the houses with them, pointing out things that they might not have realized. And I think their trust level really starts to develop at that point where I'm like, this is why I'm getting paid. This is my value to you. Then I can push some more difficult subjects on them because they're like, well, this guy's obviously doing this for our behalf. He's not just looking to write an offer and get paid on this. There's more to him than that.
Without a doubt. I think that's the most important part. And they are going to bond with you and say, oh my God, yeah, this guy knows his shit. But I do a lot of, my showings aren't, 10 minutes in and out. So there is some walk and talk time. And depending on how I feel about whatever comes up in conversation, we do start talking strategy. So, again, the whole point of this training is to give you ideas on what you can do. I really firmly believe that you have to sit down with people to really bond and connect with them and get their trust and to build that rapport. It's not necessary, but it certainly helps. And by the way, like we used to do boomtown leads, which many years ago were very successful, and then it trailed off like anything else. If you get a lead, you do want to get, the common knowledge is, or the common belief, not knowledge, common belief is that just do the first showing as long as they're not, you've checked them out, you know that you're going to be safe. Meet them, do the showing, show maybe a couple homes. You've got to do the PASA, right, the pre-agency showing agreement. But after that, then you got to say, hey, we should probably sit and chat for a little bit because you want to talk about buyer agency. And I just tell people, maybe after the showing we can stop. There's a Starbucks like right down the road. Do you guys want to stop, grab something real quick? We can chat for a few minutes. And almost always they'll be, because they get consumed. You start showing homes and they start learning things, they're getting consumed, right? So they're never going to tell you no, especially if they have like a sitter or something. Right? Hell yeah. We'll take as much time as you need, But again, the consultation part is that. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to share my screen here again quick. If I do want to cover, at least for just a few minutes, what we do in MLS. Now, we already showed you in MLS what to do. Now, there's two schools of thought on this. I'm just going to give you both of them. I have my own portal set up with my name. I've been doing this for years, where if you go to portal, because remember, I want to show them what they're going to see in MLS. So I have a search set up. I have a bunch of searches set up. They're just, whatever. And then when you go to portal and you hit view portal here, it takes them into what their view is going to look like. Because I think it's important that you just don't go, yep, you'll get a link to the MLS Flex Web portal. Good luck. You got to talk about how we schedule showings. You got to talk about not going to open houses. You got to talk about not registering for showings on Realtor.com or Homes.com or Zillow, right? Talk about how those agents get, part of your commission when you work with them, whatever it is. So I take them in here and I say, this is what it looks like. You can see that highlighted yellow C. Let's see if we can find any interesting statuses. See, there's nothing in there. You can see the price change was made. Obviously, some are under contract, and then I just show them. So this here, if you want to save the listing, you just click there. If you want to hide it, you click there, but it never goes away. It goes into these folders. So if you hid 25 of these and you want to go back after your first round of looking at homes, then it's never there. It never disappears, rather.
Does the customer client portal have aligned showings tabs and that up on top, or is it just because that's the way our MLS is set up as agents?
It does have all that stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
I guess I've never looked through it.
I mean, I viewed it, so yeah, it probably doesn't have it, I would guess. Then I also show them this thing. Here's one way that you can request a showing. Hey, John, we really like this place. Let me know if, look at that, it's Roger's listing. We can see it on, please, when you request a showing, give me your availability. I said, that's one way. You can text me as well. You can email it physically. This is usually the easiest. And you can do it in your app on your phone, and you can do it here. And then I just go into that as, an easy way to do it. The other thing I do is I show them the photos, especially if they're newer. And I might start walking through the photos and just seeing things that pop out to me, especially on older properties. So let me give you let's go to a different one. Let's look at this one. So I might go into the photos and I might say, because again, I'm just kind of showing off here, what do you think of the curb appeal? Now one of the things that we have to figure out is whether or not the AV equipment is included, because they're obviously using it upstairs. I'm just trying to find something that sticks out to me. Usually with exterior photos on old, here's a good one. So, we'll go in here and I'll just kind of show them, so these PEX lines here, a plumber would never do that, right? So we have some amateur plumbing. We have some amateur wiring here. That goes to this outlet, it looks like.
Plastic galvanized.
We've got some coax there, that's low voltage. I can't even tell what this is. Yeah, you've got a line going here. I mean, it's just a little bit of a mess, so, we can take a look at it. But I'm just kind of training them to understand what I look for, and it adds value to me. Here might be one where you talk about beaming and what that means. Here's where the sump crock is, so that's good. Teach them, you got to look past all the clutter, right? These are sill boxes, and they're insulated. You can explain how that's, if they're not insulated, you lose a lot of heat, whatever. I mean, whatever you want to do. I just give them an intro. Like this here is another good talking point, because this has been upgraded to at least 100 amp service. Now that mast is a little rusty, a little bit old, probably is also 100 amp, but it's hard to say. If it's only an inch, it's the original 60 amp wiring usually. But anyway, I just try to make these talking points Like you could talk about a chimney, you could tell that it's been tuck pointed. This may or may not work here, we don't know. There's not a vermin cap on the top, dimensional shingles, it's just talking points. Things that, you know, that you teach them to educate themselves when they're looking at properties. And again, I think I said this already. I go through, you know, if you find a home as you're driving around, let's say you see online that there's an open house, just to make it clean, text me. I don't care if you go to the open houses on your own. I just would like to register you so that they know we're working together. Because sometimes these agents can push, our clients don't know, next thing you know, they're under a buyer agency with somebody, and they were kind of coerced. People do not deal well with pressure. We're really good at it, and we tell people to F off. We're good at it. So, but back to the search, you know, like I go in, I set up the search, I add. You guys know how to do this. I usually do a quick search in MLS, whether it's by, you know, areas. I do active and delayed. They're finally starting to release delayed listings where they didn't used to. You can do things by municipality. You can do things by a map. There's a bazillion ways that you can do this. You can have as many areas along your map as you choose to. They can overlap. You can bring up. Here, I'll just confuse this. It'll go away. So then I can keep going. Okay, we want to do this. Like I said, these things can overlap. You can do whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's go into Bold Trail though, because I think there's a lot of value in this. Remember, and this is what I tell people. I'm going to set up two searches. One's in MLS, one's in our Bold Trail system. It's just our system. You can't, as a consumer, manipulate or change the parameters in MLS. I have to do it. They don't let you. Okay? By the way, I also teach them to go into the satellite view, just to look at listings, especially near railroad tracks and shit like that. But, so I'll take them into Bold Trail, and I'll just, you know, use whatever as an example. I just bring up a client, and then I do their searching in there as well. So this is my buddy's daughter. Let's just say I want to set up a search in here. So now I go to search alerts. And now I can do kind of the same thing I was doing. I can set up by areas. I can set up Pewaukee. I can set up, you know, Lannon. I'm just going to pick a couple here. Let's say Butler. I'll just get a couple done. Obviously, we're going to do for sale. I do under contract and pending because I want them to see, especially if they're new, what's all out there. Price range, you can do whatever you want. Let's say 310 to 575. Done. Beds and baths, I'm going to do 3 and 2. The reason why I'm doing this is I will tell them that they get to select, or they can customize this on their own. They can set up more searches. And what's cool about it, I'm just going to reset this, is that it will notify you, or when you go in to their activity feed, it'll show you what they're doing, okay, that they've set things up. So I think there's an advantage to using both. I like using both, even though I know, and I warn them in advance, that there might be some duplicity in this. They're going to get things sometimes more than once. But I go back in here, and because if you're on your dashboard, and this is a Bold Trail thing. If you're on your dashboard, and let me change it to me. Well, I can even do my team. You're going to start to see what people are looking at. You know, my buddy 3 hours ago looked at this one. This is also a really good way to stay active. Because if I just do mine, you know, I could see, okay, this guy looked at this. I don't need to take action on this. Well, here's Harold and Pam. They just came in yesterday. Maybe I want to text them from the system. Maybe I want to email them. Hey, what do you guys think about this one? This seems like a really good fit to me. What do you think? And I like doing it through the system. But the system wants to know that you're in here. Like, here's a message. I already replied to this, but, you know, if I got to do something in here to show the system that I acknowledged it. So, you know, I love the system. It's something I use all the time for my own clients. You can use what you want or what's convenient for you. So, the next step is obviously contract writing strategies. I'm going to save that for a workshop down the road. I don't want to overwhelm you. The buyer consultation training here today was really just to get you to think about how you can be more effective and be more engaging with your clients, and above all, convert on a much higher level, right? I almost never had a buyer that would use somebody else after we met. Not a pushy guy. You know, I spend just a couple minutes. In fact, all I tell them is, hey, you know, God, it was so good to get to know you guys. What a story. Can I tell you about me for like 2 seconds? And they're like, yeah, of course. And I'll go, yeah, started out this. It's a totally different career path. But, you know, when I was 23 years old, I got into real estate because one of the guys I used to work with in Glendale said, you're not going to be rich as a cop, do other things. And I was always fascinated by real estate. So I ended up purchasing my first duplex at 23 years old, moved in. It was 58th and Lincoln in Dallas. I lived 2 houses away from a crack house. I would come home several times where the fire department, the police department were in front of my house and streets blocked off. And, you know, eventually I did a lot of teaching, and now I own a brokerage. I got a team of 10, blah, 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 right? My team is always with me. I assign one person per client, you know, so they can assist me. Buzzwords that people like to hear. Yes, they like experience. You don't need to go into great detail. You know, you don't have to go, I've sold 752 properties and the average is this and blah, blah, blah. They don't care. What they care about is that you care about them. And you've displayed that and you've shown them, I'm here for you. But the last thing I'll tell you to make sure that you get down, and it might be on the consultation form, I don't think it is, should be, is how do you guys prefer to communicate? Because they're going to automatically get these notifications about new properties. We've already explained to them what to do if they like one. But then I want to go into, how do you guys prefer to be communicated with? And they'll say, well, I mean, really anything, but, you know, we'd prefer a text because we work during the day, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. And then I also say that when it comes to important stuff and negotiating, we're not texting, we're talking. Because I can't, you know, there's no way I could do all that stuff. Just remember, and I said it this morning at our sales meeting, and I've said it a lot of times, you are obligated to hang on to all of your communication with a client or even a potential client for up to 2 years. So the way your ICA is set up, that you guys will maintain it. I upload it all. I don't upload text. I try to not text stuff other than showings and, you know, stupid stuff. If we're going to talk about offers, we're going to talk about drafting or submitting or whatever, I'm going to, or counters, amendments, we're talking. I know Mitch and a couple of us use Plod. Just on the back of my phone, you can see the magnetic ring there. It's a way to record conversations without really people knowing. In Wisconsin, that's completely legal. But I don't record all the conversations, but it's getting to the point where during important stuff, it's not the worst thing in the world to record your conversations with people. It also transcribes it, which is cool. But if I think I'm going to have a tough conversation with somebody, or I think, you know, it's an adversarial type of conversation, or for me, it's when I talk to attorneys and whatnot, I will record the conversation just because I don't trust people. I don't record, you know, most people, I don't feel the need to. But sometimes, you know, you got to be careful. And the other thing is you got to tell people too, as I think of these ideas, I think you got to talk about showings a little bit too at some point. Here's how we show a home. As you park on the street, we're going to take our shoes off. You know, if it's pretty ratted up, it's not a, you know, great looking place. Probably keep our shoes on, but don't.
Bring your kids.
Yeah, don't bring your children, they're rats, they get in the way. But I do talk about not, and I'll remind them when we show it, just so you know, remember, people are recording us inside their homes. Don't touch stuff, and above all, don't talk about how much you love or hate the home. You just never know. I've had cop clients where they'll text me while the showing's going on. Gee, they love it. Great. I don't want to know. Yeah, she can't live without it. Okay, good to know. We'll see. All right, anything else from the studio audience? The Flopsy Mopsy twins that have joined me today, or any of you guys on online? Was this helpful? Was it too much, too little?
Overall, I think it was helpful. Gave me more ideas on how to really be better at the consultation part.
Whatever you do, try to get into some type of routine.
Yep.
When I do a CMA at a home, I do the exact same thing every single time, and it usually works pretty darn good for me, and so I stick with it. Buyers, I mean, there's no script in this stuff. There's no, like, if you go off the script a little bit, not a big deal. And, you know, just as long as you're there to help people and you want to lead them through this process, you'll be fine. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you very much.
See you guys. You're welcome.